It is 42 degrees in downtown Seattle. I'm Ursula Royteen.
From Marysville to Magnolia, this is KIRO Radio, 97.3 FM. News and talk, powered by the Pacific Northwest.
The Big Lead is brought to you by 3010 Weight Loss for Life.
The Dori Monson Show on KIRO Radio. This is The Big Lead.
Coming to you from the Carter Subaru studio, streaming on Facebook Live. Welcome to The Big Show. I could do a whole big lead on just the stuff I heard in your newscast there, Ursula, but I'm not going to.
There's a lot going on.
So they say that we don't have enough toilets for the homeless. I would say maybe we have too many homeless for the toilets that we have, and maybe we shouldn't have policies that attract homeless people from around the country to our region, which will dovetail nicely with the guest who's coming on with me at 12:30 this afternoon, King County Prosecutor Dan Satterberg. He's the one who announced, several months ago on our show, he said that he's not going to prosecute low-level drug offenses anymore. And I think that this is a disastrous policy. I think that the word is out that this is the best place in the country to be a drug vagrant. And I appreciate public officials who know that I'm going to disagree with them coming on. So we'll talk with Dan Satterberg about this policy, how he thinks it's working out. We'll do that at 12:30 this afternoon. Pramila Jayapal, she says she's going to have Medicare for all. Everybody in the country will have medical care and prescription drug coverage. Government running things always turns out impeccable. So, yeah, that's a great plan. The only thing I liked in the newscast that people got the pet food donations. That's good news. People stepped up for that. But we got a lot, and we'll talk about this circus this morning, this whole Michael Cohen thing, where I tell you what, I think this whole thing is so despicable. A guy who's an admitted perjurer, he's going to prison. He violated attorney-client privilege. He so clearly despises the president, and now he is being regarded as this heroic figure who's speaking out, and it's just unbelievable to watch and listen to the desperation that so many people have for any sound bites that are going to take down the president. And the president has lots and lots of faults, but to have Michael Cohen, the one who's pointing it out, a perjurer, somebody who's lied to Congress. I mean, this is unprecedented. A guy who's going to prison for lying to Congress is then called as the star witness by the same Congress that he lied to. That's just never happened before, but there's never been a level of hatred for a president like there is right now. So, but we'll give it some coverage through the afternoon because I know that it's a big story in some people's minds. I think the whole thing's so despicable. But with all of that as mere prelude, let's get to the big lead.
The Big Lead. Bizarro World.
I'll tell you what else is despicable, and that is how crime on the streets around here, and this gets to what I'll talk to the prosecutor about as well. Yesterday, we told you about the number of repeat offenders who are committing a vast majority of the crimes. 100 people have been identified who have committed 3,500 crimes around here. That's 35 per person. And one of the guys that we played sound bites of yesterday, KIRO 7, talked to this street vagrant named Travis Burge, who just bragged about his drug use.
That makes me functional, quite like meth. I use dirty needles. I shoot up AIDS.
You know what? You're going to get yourself sick if you keep doing that, man.
I go around and look for cops, and once I find cops, then I'll shoot up, and I'll be like, best friends.
Sounds like a quality person. We have another story that's in the news today, and that is this guy who went into a 7-Eleven and held them up at knife point. And this is a guy, a felon, who has been booked 71 times. Jeremiah Crouch. He had just been released from prison days earlier when he walked into a Queen Anne 7-Eleven and held them up at knife point. KIRO 7 did the story, and listen to the kind of guy that we're releasing out of prison and putting back on the streets, threatening the lives of your fellow citizens, your neighbors, your spouse, your children. This is the kind of guy that we're putting back on the streets.
Police say 39-year-old Jeremiah Crouch was so angry he couldn't buy cigarettes with food stamps at this 7-Eleven last Tuesday.
Okay, let me stop it right there. Okay, good. He can't buy cigarettes with food stamps. Why are we giving food stamps to somebody who's been booked 71 times? Why do you and I have to give this guy handouts when he has that kind of a criminal history? I don't know how he would eat if he doesn't get food stamps, but I know that I don't want to pay for it. I'll give money to the Union Gospel Mission, and they can take in people who, make an effort to turn their life around and that's what's so great about Union Gospel Mission. Is they'll give you a meal and they'll give you a bed, but you got to get into addiction treatment. And you have to take positive steps in your life. Why in the world are you and I buying food stamps for a guy like this? Okay, let me start it over. I'll see how much further I can go without interrupting myself.
Police say 39-year-old Jeremiah Crouch was so angry he couldn't buy cigarettes with food stamps at this 7-Eleven last Tuesday. So he returned a short time later armed with a knife and robbed the place instead, stealing cigarettes and food, which was all caught on surveillance cameras. Court documents show Crouch has more than 24 theft convictions since 2001.
Okay, 24 convictions, not charges, not allegations. 24 convictions in the last 18 years. So that's like every 9 months he gets convicted of theft and is still out and about.
Among a long list of other convictions, Crouch is identified as one of the 100 prolific offenders, highlighted by a recent report commissioned by neighborhood districts and Seattle's tourism industry.
And this is what I was talking about, and we talked about it yesterday. 100 people identified as having committed 3,500 crimes, and we let them out and about.
I spoke to the store owner by phone, who told me he's not surprised by Crouch's record and says it's getting increasingly difficult to do business in Seattle.
Well, and this is what's so heartbreaking is these business owners who the city council has contempt for. The people who create jobs, create tax base, the people who are the backbone, the economic engine of our society. And you have people like, pretty much everyone on the city council just despises them. They'll do everything to provide heroin for the addicts, but they won't provide any relief for the noble business owners among us.
At Five Corners Hardware, I spoke to Jill Wells, who says her store has also had its share of theft.
We don't know what to do. Like I said, we have security cameras around here, and that's all we can do with posting the pictures like we have been doing.
And, I was watching the KIRO 7 story, and there's just a little neighborhood hardware store, and I love those places. There was one that's closed in Ballard, Crown Hill Hardware. That was just the coolest little shop. I have a little hardware, little Ace Hardware in my neighborhood, and you get to know the people there. Not only are they trying to compete with online retailers, but these little neighborhood hardware stores, they got to compete with Home Depot and Lowe's and all the big box stores too. It's a tough gig. And when you compound it with city leaders who put these serial thieves back out on the streets, it just gets impossible for these business owners. And it makes me very, very sad for them. It makes me angry for us at, our political lack of leadership.
Crouch has been booked 71 times since the year 2000 and had at least 130 warrants for failing to appear.
71 bookings, 24 theft convictions, over 100 felony warrants. I mean, on and on.
We know that these individuals are causing a majority of the issues.
Yes, we do. And if we had leaders, we could do something about it, but we don't. We have criminals in charge, which brings me to the next story in the big lead. Which brings me to the next story in the big lead.
The big lead.
Yeah.
Your tax dollars at work.
Yeah, there's no question that we have a lot of criminals on the street because we have a lot of criminals in public office. And we told you a few days ago about how the 405 tolls apparently are here to stay, even though they were supposed to meet two sets of criteria. The tolls would have to cover operating expenses, and the toll lanes would have to move at a minimum average speed of 45 miles an hour, 90% of the time. Well, they don't. They don't go 45 miles an hour. And the Attorney General's office interpreted the legislation, and they parsed it. They said, no, they only had to do one or the other. When the language is clear that they had to meet both criteria for the toll lanes to continue operating. But Bob Ferguson, he operates the Attorney General's office in a criminal manner. And so that they can continue to rip off taxpayers for tens of millions of dollars with illegal toll lanes, that's what they're going to do. And so when you have criminals in charge politically, of course we're going to have criminals on the street. They had to change the language after they failed to meet the criteria. Here's the WSDOT Director of Tolling, Edward Barry, talking to Q13.
I'm specifically talking about two promises made to the public. One is not met, and all of a sudden you guys are gutting that from the language. It appears fishy. How could you explain it?
We're not gutting that language. That performance measure is still in there, and we're still going to report on that. If there's alternative ways that we can measure performance, that language will allow us to do that.
So they admit that they weren't meeting the requirements to continue operating toll lanes, but they just lie and cheat and steal because there's tens of millions of dollars at stake. So, yeah, when you wonder why we have so much criminality, why we have the worst property crime of any major city in the country, why we have so many criminals running the streets, because we have so many criminals in public office. When you vote for a criminal, don't be surprised when your money is stolen. Next up in the big lead.
The big lead. I sense a Dori rant coming on.
And then there's a story about a cyclist who's the latest to be killed around here. It happened on Monday on Rainier Avenue. A man was hit by a cyclist was hit by a hit-and-run driver. And a witness talked to KIRO 7. Here's, first of all, Gordon Padelford of the Seattle Neighborhood Greenways says they're very frustrated at the danger that cyclists have to encounter.
It was supposed to be 2016, then it was supposed to be 2017, then 2018, then 2019, and now the city is saying it's going to take until 2020 to make that full section safer. We're all heartbroken. There's just too many of these tragedies on Rainier Ave.
And Jasmine Becklum with Rainier Valley Greenways says the city needs to do more.
What the city did in 2015 was a good step, and we need them to finish the job.
Okay. I've talked about this for a long, long time. In fact, my friend Duff McKagan of Guns N' Roses, who is an avid cyclist, he has said the same thing that I've been saying for a long, long time. And that is, it is insane that we mix bicyclists with cars on the busiest roads. Right now, for example, the city, I was driving on 35th Northeast just yesterday afternoon, evening. And that's where they want to eliminate lanes of car traffic. They want to take these parking spaces and put a bike lane in. And they want to mix bicyclists with cars. Well, just a few blocks to the east, you have the Burke-Gilman Trail. You should put these bicyclists, and I'm one of them. I mean, I'm the main, but them over a block, 34 cars.
They were making sure that no parts of our city are left behind.
Yeah, but when you have people making policy, and, the bike lobby, they're responsible for many of these bike deaths. They know that it'd be safer to get the bicycles off the arterials, but they'd rather destroy, because it's not about making it safer for bikes. It's about destroying things for cars. And when that's your top priority, people are going to die. And that is your big lead. We're also monitoring this Michael Cohen story. Let me take you to a CBS update on that.
CBS News special report. The president's former personal attorney says Mr. Trump lied about not having paid hush money to two women who claimed to have had affairs with him.